so I've got my dial indicator and I've got it set to 0. And it is supposed to be no more than 0.031 inches or 80 millimeters of play when you move the valve. So what I'm going to do, got it up against it, move the valve. So that's well within specs. Now we'll move over to that's the exhaust. Now we'll move over to the intake one. Let's move over to the intake. And that's well within spec as well. All right, so I've checked all the valve stems. All of them are within spec, so that is good. So the head seems pretty good. Now we'll work on, I guess we'll work on checking that they're straight. The valves are straight. But I'm thinking, you know, I put them in the drill and they spin and they don't wobble. To me, that's straight, but I guess I'll do it the right way with the Prussian blue, and then I'll lap the valves as well and seat them. Okay, so next we're going to just make sure that the valves are straight. I'm not worried about the exhaust valves. I guess I probably will test them anyway. But we'll use some Prussian blue, stick them in, and see if we get a blue ring all the way around. And I'll show you that after I'm done with this first one. So as you can see, there is a blue ring around the entire surface. I must have not just put as much right there, but it does seat around the whole thing. So I'm gonna count that valve as good. Okay, so there's number 4 exhaust valve, and there's number 3 exhaust valve. I gotta wipe those off, but all of them had a blue line around them. There were a couple of thin spots, but I think it's just because I didn't have the Prussian blue on there quite thick enough. But there still was. So I think I'm good to go. I did the exhaust valves because I might as well do them. I'm here. So everything looks straight on that end. Okay, so next we are going to lap our valves. Make sure that they are seating correctly. So we have our layout fluid, our grinding compound, and our lapping tool. So what we'll do is we'll put some of the layout fluid around the valve seat, put some of the grinding compound on, and then use this to twist back and forth and grind that in until you don't hear it anymore. And then pull it out, and we can check the valves for their clearance and also the head for its clearance. And so I got my little thing here. Valve seat on the head for the intake needs to be 1.77 millimeters plus or minus 0.2. And the exhaust needs to be 2.0 millimeters plus or minus 0.2. Then the valve margin on the valve below the lapping line needs to be less than 0.79. If it's outside of those specs, then it's not seating correctly. And I got to decide if I need to go and get my valve seats recut. So at that point in time, that'll have to go to a machine shop to do that. I can't do that. And if that's the case, then maybe I have it decked at the same time. So, all right, they are all lapped. They all fell within specs. They're supposed to be 2 millimeters plus or minus 0.2 millimeters. This one was 2.22. So 2/100ths of a millimeter over spec. So I'm not worried about that. But all the other ones are right at 2, like 2.04 and everything. I couldn't really find the lapping line on the valves themselves. So I am thinking that since they're new valves, it's supposed to be 0.79 or less, and maybe that's why. Maybe I'm just using too much compound. I'll see when I do the intakes. I'll see if there's something different with those. But the exhaust ones look good. Okay, so I just wanted to see if I could show you here the distance. It's kind of hard. That distance was actually 1.57. So it's supposed to be 1.77 plus or minus 2. All of them fell within specs with the exception of this one that was 0.02 hundredths of a millimeter off. So I am good with that. And then if you kind of look around, it's all uniform really, going all the way around all the valves. So I'm happy with that. So lapping done. All right, here's exhaust valve 1. See the wobble? It's not that bad. But the other ones, the new ones, don't do that. Number 2. Okay. Number 3. Number 4. And by far the worst one. So that's all 4 exhaust valves, so you can see why they need to be replaced. Oh, that's where we are. Still got to get that bolt out of the block and hopefully figure it out. And that's the hole it goes through. All right, so today I think we're going to try to reassemble the head. We'll see how this goes. We'll get the first one in and I'll let you know how it goes. So we'll start with the intake valve on number 1, which is that one. So I think I'll flip it around, make it easier to work. All right, first one is in. So the magnet does not work on reinstalling because the little clips get stuck to the magnet and it just pulls them away. So what I had was a couple of washers that I used instead, and that worked fine. There was no problem with that. So we'll go on to the next one. So I just rubbed some oil on the valve stem before I put it in. Yeah, so we'll go on to the next one. So I did want to show this. I found this kind of interesting. So in here, there was washers. So the exhaust only had 1. The intake had 2. If I remember, as I was taking this apart, I noticed that the other ones were different as well. So I'll try to keep track as I go along. But yeah, so for some reason the intake has 2, the exhaust had 1. But I'm not exactly sure why. So if somebody knows, let me know. So there's 2 in. So the hardest part is getting the right angle so this stuff stays in. The valve doesn't come out while you're trying to put the spring compressor on. So that's kind of how I got it. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get down to the end and I don't have a port to put it in, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. So we'll keep going. So that angle seems to be pretty good. I'll have to move it, but 2 of them are in. Okay, so here's exhaust valve number 2, and there are 2 shims in this one. Now, I don't know if that's set from the factory because maybe the casting isn't perfect, and when they go to set the clearances or something like that, that it's got to be a certain amount, and they put the shims in based on that. But that's weird, because number 1 had 1, the intake had 2, this exhaust has 2, not 1. So I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so here is exhaust 3, 2 shims. So intake number 3, 2 shims. Okay, exhaust 4, 2 shims. So maybe I was wrong. That first one only had 1. So now I'm starting to wonder why it only had 1. Because every other one has had 2. I thought there were, when I took it apart, I thought there were some that had 3. But I guess I was wrong. I guess everyone has had 2 so far, except for that first one. So I'm not sure why. Okay, so here's intake number 4. And that has 2 shims. So now I really have to wonder why exhaust 1 only had 1 shim in it. But I don't know. But I mean, that's what came out, so that's what's going back in. Alright, so I thought I'd try to show you, since I got fairly good at this now that I'm on my last valve. But I take the valves, just put a little oil on them. Slide it in. 2 shims. Bottom plate. Small spring. Large spring. And here's the cap. The cap. Whoops. Hang on, let me get that. We got a roller. Put this on the valve. Cap on. 2 washers. It's on the valve. Press it. We take our 2 holding pins, and what I found works easiest is, if it'll cooperate, is to get the top on first, actually. Well, if the bottom wants to go on first, that's fine. Top, there's the bottom, and sometimes the bottom, so I just hold it a little bit with the screwdriver, and out it comes. And there you go. So that's how I got those back in. Worked pretty well. I mean, it just takes a little time, little finagling. I got better as I got further along. First few took a little bit, but all the valves are in. Awesome.